They are 1 foot tall, they have wings, and they have features that resemble a small elf. High-pitched voices and love playing harmless pranks on travelers and leading them astray. That's right folks, it's Fae Monster Week and we are going to be talking about Pixies. If you don't know what Monster Week is, it's an annual community event created by Ginny D and Pointy Hat. And as soon as I heard it was about the Fae, the first thing that come to my head was obviously Pixies. I find Pixies so fun to play in D&D, but I also find their origins in folklore and other forms of media really interesting, and I feel like there's a lot that we can take from these and add to our own games. So go get yourself a drink, settle in, things are about to get weird. To start with, I think we should look at the 2014 version, because it actually is quite fascinating. It gets 1 hit point, 15 AC, which is respectable, a dexterity of 20, some decent stealth, invisibility whenever it feels like it, and a spell list that includes sleep, detect thoughts, dispel magic, and polymorph. And, oh yeah, it doesn't even have a challenge rating of 1. But surely challenge rating means how difficult or dangerous something is to defeat. A CR1 quarter creature should be a speed bump, the kind of thing you would fight 6 of at level 1 to feel good about yourself. We all know that challenge rating doesn't really work most of the time and it's specific to your party, but I will say I think the reason it breaks down here is because that CR mostly measures hit points and damage output, not really the utility of magic. It doesn't measure that this creature can cast polymorph and completely alter the outcome of an encounter. And 5.5e did fix this. They made the Pixie a bit tougher. It's got fairy dust now as an offense option, and seems like a much more solid redesign of the old Pixie. But something that still nags at me that they don't solve is that they're still mostly just a creature, a thing with hit points and actions and a turn in initiative. But real Pixies, old Pixies, the ones from the Mortars, those things aren't really monsters at all. They're not really enemies. They're something else entirely. In West Country folklore like Cornwall, Devon, Somerset, Pixies aren't notorious for attacking people or casting hexes and curses in the classical sense, or for dragging people to fairy mounds, or nabbing your firstborn kid. No, they're famous for leading people astray. There's even a term for it, Pixie-Led. And what it describes is not being tricked by a monster, it's something subtler and honestly actually more terrifying to be fair. It's when a road you know stops working, when you're walking a path you've walked 100 times, and yet somehow you end up somewhere else. You start feeling dizzy, the distance becomes wrong and the landmarks, they're there, but they don't connect the way they should. You know? Sometimes there's mist. Old accounts of this describe it with a greenish tint, and when you're inside that greenish mist, you're swimmy. Yes, that's a dialect word which means dizzy or confused in a way that's hard to shake. You're not lost in a navigational sense, you're lost in an ontological sense. The world stops being reliable and you don't really know when it started. But don't worry listeners, there is a cure. Turn your coat inside out. I'm being serious. That's the countermeasure to one of the most disorienting supernatural experiences in English folklore. You just flip your jacket or your cloak inside out and the pixie magic breaks. The mist clears and the road starts making sense again. And then you can just skip your way home. I really do love this so much. You don't have to make a saving throw or roll arcana to identify the effect or throw a fireball. The solution is a symbolic act, a reversal, a piece of folkloric logic that says, if you present yourself as inverted, as different from the person the pixies caught, the enchantment loses its grip. And I don't think I've ever heard anything more Fae than that. It's such a beautiful, unique way of magical thinking, and it's way more interesting than just roll initiative. And before you grab your pitchforks and start chasing me off of YouTube, I'm gonna have to say it, Pixies weren't cute. I know you're all expecting the wings and sparkles and the big eyes and possibly a British accent and a very small dress made of leaves like Tinkerbell or something, or the little glowing fairy from Zelda that screams listen at you. It's just a remix. Traditional Cornish piskies, and that is the regional word by the way, piskie not pixie, which is a later standardization, were often wingless. The wings actually came largely from the Victorian era and got locked in by the Disney machine. Before that, there was little wingless figures on the moors, wearing rags and sometimes described as shriveled or childlike in a slightly off way, no glowing or particularly glamorous appearance. In a lot of cases, they were described as looking like they'd been wearing the same outfit for 300 years, which honestly is fair enough. And now we're going to get a bit weird. Some traditions said pixies were the souls of children who died before baptism, not sinful or evil or anything like that. They just had unfinished business. They got caught up between worlds, neither fully admitted to the afterlife or remaining among the living, just there, in the moors and the mist, in a kind of permanent spiritual waiting room. In some other traditions, they were said to be ancient druids who refused to convert to Christianity and were cursed to shrink smaller and smaller across the centuries. So your choices are lost children who never made it home, or old pagans slowly disappearing into the landscape because they're too stubborn. Both are pretty haunting, to be fair, but neither sound like a creature whose signature ability is being really good at stealth. And there is another angle that folklore gives us that the stat block completely ignores, which is that pixies and old stories often have rules. Not laws per se, but social physics of a very specific and particular being. They can be helpful. There are accounts of pixies tidying homes and doing chores while the household sleeps, helping widows manage farms and being good neighbors basically. The kind of supernatural assistant should accept without asking too many questions. But if you piss one off, it's a different story completely. They'll pinch you. They'll steal stuff and move it in a way that makes you think, did I do that? Or did somebody else move it? They start playing with your head, making you doubt yourself. They lead your horses in circles and tangle their manes in a pattern called the pixie locks. And yes, that is a real term. The really fascinating rule, I think, is about clothing. In some traditions, if you give a helpful pixie a piece of clothing, like Harry Potter elves, like Dobby, then they're free, essentially. They'll leave forever, just gone, no more help or presence. The arrangement is dissolved. As humans, it doesn't really make much sense, but to a fairy, it makes perfect sense. You giving them clothing implies they need clothes. It implies that they're insufficient and that you're actually being a bit rude, and then they're done with you. I really do find it's them sort of details that make pixies in your games feel more realistic than just what it says on the stat blocks. They have pride and they actually have a social framework you have to learn and respect if you want things to go well. And I think we should take a quick tour of other pixies because I actually found it super useful. Like the Harry Potter Cornish pixies, which have to be mentioned because I've been literally saying
Cornish pixies
in my head the entire time I've been making this. But even the small glimpse we get of them in Harry Potter, you get quite a lot of information. They're chaotic, they like to create noise and disrupt things and embarrass people. The way they're portrayed in Harry Potter makes you feel like there's something that you survive rather than defeat, And in Spiderwick Chronicles, they take a completely different angle, where pixies more of an ecology. You find the nest and you read the field guide and you learn their patterns and their signs before you ever see one directly. There's something called the Clod test, which I'll let you look up. It's just very cool and very weird. The Spiderwick pixies reward observation. They're not there to pick a fight. They're a mystery you can learn if you pay attention. And then in Artemis Fowl, you have Opal Cowboy, which I probably just butchered, who is also a pixie and is also a genius that's completely unhinged and a sociopath. They have access to advanced weaponry and zero emotional regulation. She proves that pixies can be terrifying and manipulative villains. If you're running a high-level campaign and you want a Fae mastermind, Opal Cowboy is a pretty good design template. And then we also have Fairly Odd Parents, which I'm being completely serious about. The pixies in that show are grey, monochrome bureaucrats who want to eliminate fun and replace magic with efficiency. They carry around clipboards and file paperwork, and they're corporate agents of anti-whimsy. And I honestly think that's a brilliant reinvention. The idea that pixies don't represent nature and magic or chaos, and even mischief, instead like a terrible suffocating order that is basically the complete opposite. I think you could have a pixie guild that is the complete opposite to what you'd expect a pixie to be. And they even have like a court that punishes you when you don't do those boring things. Maybe the two guilds are fighting. Before we jump into making this work for D&D, there's a couple of other ones I want to mention as well from folklore. You have the Piskie royalty, like Joan the Wad, the queen of the Piskies, whose name refers to Eastern Cornish term for a torch or bundle of straw. She has two sides to her, one where she can be the bringer of good luck and lucky charms, and the other where she's a will-o-wisp, leading people to their doom. Oh crap, I knew I shouldn't have mentioned will-o-wisps. Come on Snuff, I've nearly finished the video. Can't you just wait? It's too late again, isn't it?
You put me in the same category as this will-o-wisp. Insulting. Luckily for you, you can make up for it by checking out Describe. Whether you're looking for read-aloud texts or battle map descriptions or film quality ambiences, or even music and effects, Describe can suit all of your needs. They've even got a tool called Opus, which streams layered audio either from Discord or directly at your table. It is free to try, but you can use my code FLAMY. It grants you 30 days extended trial on any plan. Using my click-through link will support the channel. Thank you, Describe, for the sponsor. Back to it, Flamey.
Sorry about that, guys. Well, anyways, as I was saying. And then you have the king of the Piskies, Jacko the Lantern, who is also sometimes referred to as Stingy Jack. He's a clever, deceitful man who apparently trapped the devil twice. One time by tricking him into turning into a coin to pay for a drink, and then later by tricking him into climbing a tree and carving a cross into the bark. Jack did actually make a deal with the devil, promising never to take his soul to hell, which then cursed Jack. Heaven refused him, and the devil kept his word and refused to give him entry to hell. This meant that he had nowhere to go, and Jack was condemned to wander the earth between worlds. The devil tossed him a burning coal, which Jack placed inside of a carved turnip to act as a lantern. There's also multiple forms of the Pixies, such as Spriggans, which were described as shriveled and saggy and dangerous guardians of ancient ruins and buried treasure, notoriously malevolent and grow to a giant size when threatened, or Knockers, which are small mining spirits who wear miniature versions of miners' clothes. They are named for knocking sounds they made on mine walls, which miners interpreted as either a warning of a cave in or as a malicious attempt to cause one. And if you're looking for real life inspiration, there's a few sacred and folkloric sites like the Sheep Store, which is referred to as the Pixies Cave. It's a natural granite cavern on Dartmoor where visitors traditionally leave proprietary offerings of pins or grass to avoid being pinched by the resident pixies. Or Ottery St. Mary, which is called Pixie's Parlour, which is a sandstone cave where the town's pixies were allegedly banished. This is also commemorated annually on Pixie Day in June, where local children dress as pixies and capture the town's bell ringers. Just a few added extras to get the juices flowing, you know? Now, if we take all of this and put it together, we can come up with some interesting stuff for our tables. Like we should stop building pixie encounters around initiative order. The first thing that should happen when your players enter pixie territory is that it feels wrong. They've already been down this road twice, and now it's starting to loop them back to a mossy stone that they don't think was there last time. One party member's water tastes different, 2 horses are exhausted in the morning with their manes in elaborate knots, someone's boots have moved 6 inches from where they left them, and the fire relights itself on the other side of the camp. It's all trying to communicate to your players that something here has noticed your presence. And when things start to escalate, you don't have to give your players a saving throw, give them a weird fix, like turning their cloaks inside out, leaving an offering at a specific stone before dawn, or apologizing in a specific way, and crucially, not knowing what the correct specific way is until they figure it out, like walking backwards out of the grove, or returning something that wasn't theirs to take, even if they didn't know they'd taken it. And we need to make our pixies more morally inconsistent. They're not good and they're not evil or chaotic. It's a random dice roll with who you're gonna get. It's inconsistent the way old things are inconsistent. They're protective of their place, offended by things that seem harmless, and they can be helpful or they can be cruel, and it could be something you said 3 interactions ago. And remember to use different types of pixies. You got road pixies that make the distance wrong, mime pixies, knockers that tap warnings in tunnels, and woe to you if you ignore them. You've got domestic piskies that help run households and leave if you acknowledge them too directly, or courtly pixies serving some strange little queen you've never actually met. And then you could use more pixies, which are just mostly missed and bad decisions. Each type should have a different set of rules, and your players will have to learn the local variety, which means engagement, and that section of your campaign you carved out for the Feywild is more than just whacking stuff with your sword. And if you're playing a pixie, you have all this great information and lore to use to make your character more interesting. Maybe they've come from one of these specific guilds, either the boring one that likes paperwork and stuff to be bland and in shades of grey, or you've come from one of these other varieties of pixie. Ask your DM to give you something not necessarily overpowered, but maybe meaningful to your backstory. Like you can turn into green mist for a minute, or your stealth's higher because you've spent so much time playing tricks on people, or you get prestidigitation as a cantrip for free. If you really really desire the tiny experience, you could use the sidekick rules from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It allows you to apply warrior, expert, or spellcaster levels directly to a standard pixie stat block. Although some people have said this can be exceptionally overpowered, so be careful, DMs. Another cool thing you could use is the 4th edition shrink ability. It basically makes medium-sized gear usable for a 1-foot tall hero. You could also lean in even further and make it so that the skin of your pixie smells like fresh brownies or insectile legs instead of normal ones, or glittery mist that constantly surrounds them. Basically, the point of this video is to show you all the options you have to make pixies so much more interesting than how they're portrayed in the monster manual. There's a rich history and lore that goes back around 1,000 years. That's a lot of stories and a lot of information and interesting facts that you could just take and use for your tables. You don't have to come up with it all on your own. And with that said, how do you use pixies in your games? If you're a player, are you currently playing a pixie, or have you ever played a pixie? What was your experience, and share any tips you have. Let us know in the comments so we can all start debating about it. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay spicy, adventurers.